Keith Myers here again. Going to do a little series of videos that's going to depart a little bit from the Bowie knife material, but not really, because there's a lot of overlap. I wanted to talk about the use of the Spanish Navaja. And I'm really doing this little series of videos to show what I've been gleaning from my research going through a specific manual called Manual del Baratero. And I'm really doing this for the Navaja Research Fencing group that's on Facebook, so these guys, my friends, can kind of look and see what they think, make suggestions, see if they've been coming up with the same kind of things. So I may come back and change some of these videos in the future depending on what feedback I get. But just wanted to explore this. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar, let me give a little background. The use of the Navaja. The Navaja is the Spanish knife. Dates back probably to the 1700s. It was more prolific during the 1800s, the same as the era of the Bowie knife. It kind of fascinates me because there is a historical book written about the use of this Spanish Navaja, which makes it a HEMA, a historical European martial art. We have a book documenting it. It's written about in other places, so there's more of a historical trace for it than there actually is for use of the Bowie knife. The other thing that fascinates me is the fact that the use of the Navaja was pretty widespread in Spain, and probably also in the areas colonized by Spain, which would mean Mexico and South America. And there were a lot of Spanish people of Spanish descent in the southwest of the United States during James Bowie's day, Spanish Southwest. So it's very likely that there was some of these Spanish Navaja techniques influencing people using the Bowie knife and had some input there. So I find that fascinating. I also find fascinating that when you look at antique Navajas, some of the blade shapes have that clipped point. Looks just like a Bowie knife blade. I think that's cool. So there is this manual called the Manual del Baratero, which was written in Spanish, of course, in 1849, and kind of outlines very basics of the system. Okay, and that's what we're going to kind of look at. That's why I'm calling this Lessons from the MdB, Lessons from the Manual del Baratero, what I've been gleaning from reading it. I'm basing this on two different English translations. One is an English translation that I found on a Russian website, dates back to about 2005, which I suspect is one of the initial drafts that my friend Mike Ruhala made and kind of released to the public and kind of has been saved. The other one is the translation done by Master James Loriega that was published by Paladin Press in 2005. This was actually in a book form, and he made a lot of good commentary on the translation. Unfortunately, Paladin Press has folded, so this book is no longer in print, but you can still find it in the secondhand dealers. You can hit it right, you can find it at a good price. Sometimes it's at an exorbitant price. It's just all a matter of timing. But two English translations. I know other people have English translations in the works that will hopefully be coming out soon. We kind of compare and contrast what different people are coming up with. But this manual describes really, it's very basic motions for the use of the Spanish knife, but it's still enough where you can kind of start to see what it probably looked like and have the features of it. And like the Bowie knife, this was a dueling system. So as you learn these basics and then you start to kind of spar with it, we can start filling in some of the gaps maybe that aren't in the manual with common sense and what works. Okay? It's that simple. So let's get started. The Navaja. This is a typical Navaja, maybe a little on the small side. They came much bigger. You can imagine a folding knife that was almost like having a Bowie knife that folded. But you can see a clip point just like a Bowie knife. They had a lock mechanism on the back. They usually narrowed and kind of came to a point. So this is a Navaja. So first, just the basic guard position, or Guardia with a Navaja, was what the manual describes is pretty much standing square. This hand is low, protecting the abdomen. It's floating around. And this hand is back. The thumb is along the spine of the blade, and it's close to the hip. One of the illustrations shows it down alongside the leg, like you're moving here, but it's back here. You're not sticking your arm out there where it's a target. You're not doing this. It's back here. the feet are parallel and equal distance from the opponent. You're not standing like this, right? Because this is a dueling system. You're faced off. The guy's taking snapping cuts at you and you're staying just out of the way. This hand is tucked back, ready to parry when necessary, but again, you don't want to stick it out there and let it be a target. This is the basic Guardia, right? So from the side, we're faced off here. We can move to either side. The feet are nicely, knees are bent, probably on the balls of your feet. A little here, ready to dodge and to move. So the motion, there's not a lot of footwork described in the manual. So I can picture this kind of motion. The footwork is just kind of free, kind of moving around like a boxer would move, you know? You're sparring with this, you know? There's not anything that's very set and solid. Just nice flowing motion. Talks about the hands being in slight motion. So you're not just frozen in one point. This is kind of like milling in old school boxing. The hands are kind of milling, so make it less predictable. And this square stance is important because we'll talk about later, the cambio is switching hands. I can switch hands quickly, and now I'm on this kind of a guard position, right? So if I'm taking a forward stance, then I'd have to have that moment to change, where if I'm square, it can be quick. I can be moving around, this hand is ready to receive, it's quick. It's a quick hand change, right? Which we'll talk about on another lesson. Now, according to the manual, the only time you have one leg forward is when you put something in this hand as a defense. So, again, this is from Spain. So, one of the big things is having the cape that they were wearing wrapped around their left arm, right? So you'll see pictures with the cloak all the way up the arm. So, modern day, I've just got a jacket here. And the idea is, I'm not wrapping this around my multiple arm. This is not meant to pad my arm so I can take a cut. This is meant to be used like a bullfighter's cape with what the matadors called a veronica, right? So I'm here. Now I put this side forward because now I can hide my blade behind my cape, my jacket, so you can't really see where it's at and where it's coming, right? This is again not meant to pad my arm so much as it's meant to move around and be deceptive. And if a thrust is coming from my opponent, it can get caught up in the fabric, and maybe I can catch it. Or I can use this to throw in front of his face before thrust. Or maybe throw it over his arm as he's trying to cut at me or thrust at me. I use it as a defense. And so if I have something in this hand as a defense, that side is forward and that knife stays tucked back here out of the way. They also talk about using the hat. So you can imagine back then a hat would have been a leather hat or a thick wool hat. It would have been pretty heavy, not a thin ball cap like we have today. So I use this instead, just a focus mitt, but I'm holding it here so it's loose and floppy like a hat would be. So it'd be the same thing. I'm here. Now this is heavy enough, thick enough that maybe I can intercept a blow, right, with this, right? Knock things out of the way and still kind of hide my knife as I'm moving around, okay? I've got a hat in this hand, okay? That's the basic Guardias as I see them, with the essential one being square stance, just like this. Okay? That's my lesson 1.